Hello, my friends. I'm Ryan. Welcome to my book review. Today I have a non-fiction book entitled The Soul's Code with the subtitle In Search of Character and Calling. Written by James Hillman, published in 1996. This is roughly 300 pages, and Hillman's goal is to convince you that modern psychology has failed to address the soul. The meaning of psychology, the etymology, is the study of the soul, and psychology has largely dismissed the existence of the soul in favor of, in Hillman's view, inadequate theories that explain human character and our destiny, such as the parental fallacy. Your life is merely a result of what happened in your childhood. Your fate is directed by your parents, whether you had a nurturing mother or a non-nurturing mother, whether you had an asshole father or a very kind father. So this is the parental idea, the idea that your life is dictated by your nurture, by your parents, as well as your heredity. We always talk about nurture versus nature, and I'm not trying to say that those do not have a place. I'm just trying to explain the late James Hillman's arguments in The Soul's Code, which I think we should at least hear him out. I found this to be a very interesting book. So what does Hillman offer in replacement of some of contemporary psychology's favorite explanations of how we are who we are? Well, he harkens back unto the ancients. He goes into this idea of the daimon. This is a quasi-divine being that is the guide of your soul. So not only does Hillman affirm the existence of a soul, so basically that each and every one of us, you, me, and everyone you know, has a unique soul that has a guide. Okay, now this sounds kind of crazy, right? If you're a strict materialist. And he goes into how we have come to the place where we no longer believe in invisible entities. We no longer believe in daimons. We no longer believe in souls. He talks about the French rationalism of the 17th and 18th centuries and the positivism of the 19th century. So he gives a historical account not only of the ideas of the soul, but also the ideas that destroyed our faith in the soul. Basically, we live in a world where the dominant thought is, unless you can find it, unless you can measure it with a scientific instrument, it does not exist. So let's account for everything by the things that we can measure with our instruments. Now, the idea of the soul and the daimon goes back to the ancients. He talks about some of Plato's writings on the daimon, that in Aristotle, he goes into Plotinus, who was a famous Neoplatonist. It's not heavy on the history. But those are salient points that I thought I should mention. His main argument is that you should believe in your soul. You have a soul. And not only do you have a soul, but you have a soul guide. And this is what is the daimon. It is also referred to in other cultures. The daimon was the Greeks' conception of it. It was translated into the genius, if you've ever heard of the term the genius. This was the popular conception that the Romans had for this soul guide. It is something that urges you. You can't put your finger on it. It's more than an appetite. It's more than an instinct. It's more than an idea. It is almost like this, as I mentioned a little earlier, quasi-divine, because when you come in contact with the daimon or the genius, and he mentions many other terms for this phenomenon that some of us experience, such as the guardian angel, as well as some of the Native American terminology. So there's all sorts of, if you're interested in this idea that you have inside of you an acorn that is pushing out to become what it knows from the very get-go of your conception, and maybe even before that. Now, that sounds a little crazy, but this is an idea that you can accept or reject, and Hillman presents strong arguments and anecdotal examples of why we do have an acorn, this thing inside of us, not just your genes. And he talks about genetics. He talks about nature and nurture. He gives both of these ideas their due credit, but he goes further than that and gives many examples of particularly famous people, lots of famous people across the spectrum, people from hundreds of years ago, composers, people from the last century, singers like Ella Fitzgerald, presidents, Billy Graham, Hitler. He talks about all of these people, and he goes into their life story and explains how they were influenced not just by their parents, not just by the milieu that they were raised in, but by this irresistible urge. And many of them have even talked about it. So this is just my opinion or take on this, is that if you are the only thing that is actually going to really convince you of the existence of the soul or a daimon or God or any sort of phenomena that humans encounter throughout the aeons, yet we cannot put our finger on exactly where it is an experience with it. So the reason I even bought The Soul's Code by James Hillman was after I came back from my ayahuasca experience several years ago. I went down to the jungles in Ecuador, right in the Amazon, and had a very powerful experience where I encountered some intellect, or perhaps it's an aspect of my psyche. I don't know, but it was something very powerful, and it used images to reaffirm my understanding of who I am, where I came from, and my destiny and my life. And I had sort of a reevaluation of how I looked at my life, and I started to believe in my fate again. It was an idea. I always believed in my fate, I believe, as a child, and then somehow, as you get lost in the contemporary views of the world, we sometimes do get drowned. We have our daimon, or our soul's cries unto us, drowned out by the world, by our education, by society, by the dog-eat-dog world that is telling you, no, life is about survival. You are nothing but a random statistic of protoplasm and genetics and your environment. And it is a very powerful message that we get from our world generally. If you grow up a typical person in the Western world without a powerful bridge into the invisibles, which religion largely was, as well as philosophy. So I had a personal encounter a little after, around the age of 35 and going into my late 30s, that pushed me to seek out understandings of what I was experiencing. So that's how I got into Carl Jung. Carl Jung was also mentioned at least several times in this book, The Soul's Code. I believe James Hillman worked with the Jungians, taught at the Jungian Institute, although he does have a somewhat different view, or contrary view to many of the Jungians. That's a side note. Because Jung dealt with the soul, psychology, the study of the soul, and why is it that you don't really get that in a psychology class? You have to go to some people who go a little bit further, who risk perhaps even ridicule or ostracism or alienation from their professional colleagues, to talk about this very ancient idea, an idea that a lot of us feel. We feel we have a destiny. We feel we have a fate. Fate is one of the words he uses a lot. We feel like we have something in us that is pushing towards realization. Self-realization might be a more modern term for what we're trying to describe, but it might not even go all the way. So James Hillman offers a really comprehensive argument for why you should believe that you are special, and not just special like I'm 5'9" 3/4 with light brown hair, but special as in you have an invisible. Forget about invisible, because he talks about the dichotomy between visible and invisible, and how your character is evident in everything you do, and the meaning of character. It's the way you interact. I know I'm going all over the place, but as I'm talking, all of these ideas are starting to amalgamate or congeal in my head and bringing new insights into my mind. It is a fantastic book. If you don't believe in the soul and you want to see someone give a crack at convincing you, or you do believe in the soul and you want to hear not only some of the different views of soul, fate, daimon, genius from around the world, from various cultures, as well as examples of famous people and maybe even not so famous people, but people who were considered geniuses, people who had tragic lives. He talks about, so that's a very interesting point. We should talk about that. So, all right, the daimon, okay? The daimon, this sort of soul guide. So the idea is that you have this image of your life, and you get flashes of it in your life. So it's like the image of who you are, and it doesn't change from your birth till you die, and it might have existed even before your birth. And the daimon the daimon's job is to guide you towards realizing your full potential and what your soul craves. The soul has there's this old idea, and I think it goes back to the Greeks and perhaps even before, that when we come into this world, our soul sort of forgets who it is, and it's our job to sort of affirm it, and we get these flashes of insight. He talks about Ella Fitzgerald, who went on to do a dancing competition, and then suddenly she changed her mind and she said, no, I'm going to sing. And then she sang, and we all know Ella Fitzgerald is one of the most famous and beautiful singers of the 20th century. I don't know if I'm not doing the best job at convincing you that you have a soul or a daimon, and I don't even want to convince you. That's up to you. But I think James Hillman does a very good job. The anecdotes are fantastic. I mean, a lot of famous people felt they were pushed to do what they wanted to do. My favorite author, D.H. Lawrence, his good friend, Aldous Huxley, said D.H. Lawrence was possessed by his daimon. This is an idea that is not just on the fringe. Even though it might not be taught from the ivory tower of academia, it is something that many greats believed in, and many just non-greats, many of us experience, whether you do ayahuasca in the Amazon or you just live a normal life. You may have felt that you have a soul, and you may have felt that you have something inside you that is pushing you towards following your soul or realizing your soul. So that's what the Soul's Code is all about, In Search of Character and Calling. Lots of, a little bit of history, lots of story, and a lot of criticism of modern, or at least contemporary psychology at the time of the writing in the late 1990s, largely a materialist explanation of how we are, who we are, but I don't think that's changed all that much. I think you will enjoy this book, The Soul's Code by James Hillman. My name is Ryan Freeman. If you have any questions or comments, put it down in the comments, like this video, share, and subscribe. Thank you. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.